verses 5 and 6. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Well meant are the wounds a friend inflicts, but profuse are the kisses of an enemy. This is the word of the Lord.
So, about 15 years ago, while I was a youth pastor, I had a young man in the youth group who was having some frustrations with his mother. Apparently, she was nagging him. That was his word, not mine. I know better. He didn't. Some of his attitudes and his decisions seemed to stir up in her frustration. He wasn't doing well in school. He had friends around him who weren't helping him make the best decisions. And I remember very clearly this young man mentioning that he was tired of it. He was tired of all of the corrective behavior, all of the correcting his mom tried to do for him. Tired of her always making him feel bad for his mistakes. And I remember very clearly that he said, "I wish that my mother could love me and support me like my friends do, no matter what." And I had been a parent not for very long at this point, maybe a year, it might not have even been that long. And I remember asking him, because I was taken aback a little bit by this idea that his friends might love him more than his mother. He sure seemed to think so. So I asked him, "Well, what sort of things is she nagging you about?" "Oh man, Chris, everything, my grades, my friends, my activities, everything I do. The other day I came home and I smelled like cigarettes because my friends smoke, I don't, and she started asking me a whole bunch of questions, "Whoa, are you smoking? Why are you friends with people who smoke? You know that's not good for you, don't you?" And I could just sense the frustration in him. So I asked him, I said, "Well, why do you think your mom does that? Do you think she likes to nag you?" And he goes, "I don't know, I just think she's a control freak. I'm not the kind of person she wants me to be. Well, if that's the case, then I'm just not the right kind of person. She doesn't like my friends. She thinks they're bad influences on me, but they really aren't." And I remember asking him, I said, do you think your mom loves you?" And he said, "Yes, I know she does, but she doesn't love me the way my friends do. She's so intent on changing me, so intent on making me the kind of person that she is, and I'm not like her." And I sat and I thought about it for a second, and I asked him this question. Let's put this hypothetical scenario in front of him, and I said, if you had a cancer growing on your back, and you were choosing to ignore it, or you didn't notice it was there, this thing, it threatened your health, it was something that was obviously poisoning you and that had the potential to kill you, but you weren't aware of it. Would you rather have somebody who was willing to risk hurting your feelings to point it out to you? Or would you rather have somebody who chose to ignore this growth because they were more concerned about how you would respond to them than they were with your actual health? Would you want your friends to be willing to put your friendship on the line to help make you aware of the cancer growing on your back, to help you maybe fix it, as painful as it may be? Or would you rather that they be more concerned with whether or not you still like them? And I could see on his face a brief dawning of realization. And I asked him, what if your mom's criticism is being offered because she loves you enough to point out the cancer on your back? What if your mom is so concerned about your well-being that she's willing to jeopardize the thing that she cares about just about more than anything else? And that's your relationship with her. What if she cares so much about your health and success and well-being that she's willing to risk your relationship with her in order to point out those things that might threaten your health and your success and your well-being. But that kind of love can be painful, both to give and to receive. Because criticism is painful, especially in those places where we have let the cancer on our back fester the longest. But we all need somebody to love us like that, don't we? We all need somebody who's willing to correct us, willing to point out where we are failing, willing to help us be better. This morning's proverb is interesting to me because at first glance it seems to confuse what friends do and what enemies do. It seems to indicate that friends inflict wounds and enemies offer kisses. It seems like that's backwards to us. It's not my enemies that offer me kisses, it's my friends. It's my friends that offer affection and warmth and intimacy. Isn't that what a true show of love looks like? Because kisses don't come from enemies, wounds come from enemies. And I kind of wonder, why is that not as obvious to the writer of the Proverbs as it is to me? Because this morning's proverb insists that friends are the ones who are willing to wound us. Enemies, the ones who offer kisses. Enemies, the ones who simply pat us on the back and maybe let us live in our suffering. Because only those who truly love us are willing to offer us constructive criticism, willing to correct us so that we can be better. My children are painfully aware of this. I tell them all the time, I wouldn't get angry with them if I didn't love them. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't get upset. I would just shrug my shoulders and say, well, I don't really care what kind of person you turn into. If I didn't care about them, I'd let them be self-destructive. If I didn't care about them, I'd just let them grow up to be arrogant and self-centered. I'd let them continue in their self-righteousness and their greed and their hypocrisy. But I love my children. I love them enough to kiss them. Probably more often than they want, to be perfectly honest with you. But I also love them enough to be disappointed by them and to want to correct them. And I would rather have them be angry with me and moving towards wholeness than be happy with me and moving towards destruction. The one who offers kisses when rebuke is necessary is often too cowardly, too lazy, too selfish to risk what they love for the well-being of the one that they love. Sometimes when love is hidden, it wounds us. And when rebuke is open, it heals us. Loving wounds offer us more than apathetic kisses or pats on the back. Corrective criticism is open and direct and may seem severe to the person who receives it, but in the end, it has the power to bring healing and wholeness. Those who are willing to tell us what we need to hear, even if it might upset us, even if it might damage our relationship. The ones who are willing to jeopardize something that they love to help us become all that we are created to be. That's the kind of friend that we need. That's the kind of love that we need. But I'll be honest, I don't always foster those kinds of friendships. Because to do so would require that I be grateful when I receive an open rebuke, when I receive constructive criticism. But that's not always my response. I've had a lot of people who've stepped into my office through the years who've offered me a gentle rebuke, a criticism. Somebody who's loved me enough to point out the areas where I needed to improve, things they were concerned about. And I have the same response to it every single time. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's somebody in the church with whom I have a close relationship or somebody that I don't know very well. It doesn't matter if it's my wife or my best friend or the person who's been after me from the moment I started. I had the same response to it every time. I hate it. I absolutely hate it every single time. Every time somebody tells me that my sermons aren't working for them, every time somebody points out that I have failed to take care of one of the people in the church or I've let somebody down, every time somebody points out that I'm not doing what I need to do, every time my wife calls me out on my behavior or my attitude or a joke that I made, I hate it. Every single time. But I work really hard to not get too angry and defensive. Not always successfully, mind you. But when I choose to lash out and ignore criticism, when I choose to be dismissive or stifle what they have to say, I lose out on one of the most important potential sources of growth available to me. It isn't easy to accept that kind of pain. The criticisms that hurt the worst are often the most necessary. The things about which we are most defensive are the things where we probably most need to be criticized. Because the criticism that hurt the worst are often in the places where we have ignored the cancer on our backs the longest. Where the wounds have festered for years and they've become infected. Those places, those wounds, are easily the most painful, and because they are the most painful, they are the ones that we need to heed most carefully. But because they're the most painful, they're the ones that we tend to ignore or dismiss. The ones that hurt the most due to their years of infection have the most potential to poison us. I want to ask you, before we go any further this morning, to take just a moment to consider what criticisms have been the hardest for you to accept. Was it constructive? Would heeding that criticism make you a better person? Our response to criticism often makes offering it difficult for others. I know that for me as a pastor, when I see things from people in the church, it's difficult for me to step in and say, hey, we need to correct this behavior, because I know full well you don't have to stay here. If you don't receive that criticism well, you could very easily just say, I don't need to be a part of this. So it's especially difficult for those who love us most, who have perhaps the most to lose, to offer us criticism. They don't want to hurt us or hurt the relationship. They are often most aware of how sensitive we are to those places with open wounds. And they don't want to cause us pain. But something that I have realized in my now 47 years is that the people who hate me don't have that compunction. They are not resistant or hesitant to point out my failures, my hypocrisy, every chance they get. They're willing to challenge me and confront me, and they don't care if it makes me feel stupid or guilty or defensive. When this proverb tells us that open rebuke is better than hidden love, I spent a lot of time thinking about that, because it seems to me that the rebuke that is most easy or is easiest to dismiss is the rebuke that my enemies have for me. And I wonder if the criticisms that our enemies have might offer more to us, might offer more to help make us better than the hidden love of our friends. And what if the cutting remarks that challenged our shortcomings were more important than the pats on the back telling us that we are fine just the way we are? What if the people who aren't blinded by their love for us were better situated to point out the cancer on our backs because they didn't care if poking it caused a little bit of pain? As a matter of fact, they might actually enjoy that it caused a little bit of pain. It's easy to dismiss those who point out our faults because they want to cause us pain. But I wonder if we do ourselves a disservice when we choose to ignore them. I'm sure you have noticed in the past 30, 40, 50 years that the Christian church has a lot of detractors. Those detractors seem to be growing every day. Many of them seem to come from our own ranks. And oftentimes those people are not hesitant to poke at the cancers. It's a lot of people whose greatest concern is making sure that our dirty laundry gets aired. Now I know that the criticisms they have for the Christian church are seldom intended to be constructive. I'm certain that they hope to tear us down. But what if the Christian church started to accept the criticisms levied at us? What if we began to see them as an opportunity to recognize where we are most desperately in need of healing? What if we cherished them even more than the hidden love and the apathetic kisses and the pats on the back of those who don't seem all that concerned about our shortcoming? Think about the criticisms that you hear about the church, because they happen all the time. Have you ever heard anybody criticize the American church for being too hypocritical? Is that something that you've heard before? Ever heard somebody claim that Christians talk about the love and grace and welcome of Jesus, but spend more time condemning those outside the church than they do showing them the love that we claim is so important? It would be easy to be dismissive of that criticism. But even if they are speaking out of anger and hatred, are they poking at a cancer that needs to be addressed? Are they pointing out a wound that has the potential to kill us? Who knows better how we have failed to love than those whom we have failed to love? Have you ever heard anybody criticize the American church for being concerned about eternity in heaven, so much so that we are dismissive of suffering here on earth. Ever heard somebody criticize the American church because we're more concerned with getting souls into heaven than we are with filling hungry bellies or providing safety for the insecure or correcting injustices? You ever heard anybody criticize the American church for being judgmental of those who don't believe like us? Of condemning people to hell because they don't accept our view of the world? When we hear Gandhi say, "I like your Christ, but not your Christianity," do we hear him pointing out a cancer that we ignore at our own peril? Or do we choose to ignore him because he's not one of us? When people tell us, and maybe they don't tell you, but they tell me this all the time, and they find out I'm a pastor, I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. I pray every day. I care about spirituality. But I'm not going to participate in organized religion. When people tell me that, my immediate initial response is to assume that the fault lies with them. But I wonder if it might be more helpful if I stopped to consider that at least some of the fault lies with me. That maybe organized religion doesn't reflect the Jesus and the God that they claim to love. It's difficult to receive criticism from people we love. But at least we can't dismiss their criticism. But those whom we know don't like us, it's much easier to pretend, and we often do so, that their criticism doesn't have anything to offer us. And yet this morning's proverb insists that open rebuke is better than hidden love. The rebuke of our detractors, even if offered in anger or hatred, may have more to offer us than those who simply pat us on the back and tell us everything is fine. Friends, I believe deeply in the possibility of the church. More than I believe in anything else to address, you name it. I believe in the possibility of the church more than I believe in the possibility of the government, Republican or Democrat. I believe in the possibility of the church more than I believe in the possibility of the economy. More than I believe in the possibility of NGOs. I believe in the possibility of the church to reveal a salvation that can change not only our eternities, but our present as well. The only way that we will ever reveal that salvation is if we are willing to accept the rebuke that can help change us, that can help heal us, that can help us recognize where we are not all that God has created us to be. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. In the name of God, our Creator, Jesus Christ, our Redeemer, and the Holy Spirit who rebukes and sustains us. Amen.
Amen.